Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Janine Between the Lines, literature and lifestyle for leisure. Today is a wonderful day, a wonderful night. Thank you guys for tuning in. What do you get when you cross a book-related episode with a podcast review and a listener Q&A? You get this freaking episode. Today's episode is going to be such a fun one. I think I mentioned it in my last pod, but I've been reading a book that I rented called A Man Called Ove after multiple Instagram colleagues of mine have recommended this via stories. It's by Frederick Backman. And I'll kind of be going over how I felt about the book. A good portion of this episode will also be connecting experiences in this book with a listener's inquiry. So thank you in advance to my anonymous listener who sent in their question for me to talk about today. And today's topic will kind of be about personality types and how similar different personalities interact and work in functional romantic relationships. One of the podcasts that I listened to by Brené Brown, she is an amazing woman, and I'll kind of go into her bio a little bit later, but it kind of just by happenstance, I listened to a podcast where she was discussing love with Dr. Julie and John Grotman. So a culmination of all these things together kind of centered around the topic for today, which is personalities and relationships. So, because I'm the love guru. But anyways, I just thought it would be kind of interesting, kind of tie in my book review to a bunch of things happening right now, things that I'm listening to, and things that you guys are asking me as listeners. So if you're excited to keep listening to this podcast, go ahead and keep on listening. Like this podcast, review it on Apple Podcasts, or share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter. And thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoy. So just to start you guys out and to give you a little background about A Man Called Ove by Frederick Backman, I'm going to read you guys the Amazon kind of synopsis on it. So, meet Ove. He's a curmudgeon, the kind of man who points at people he dislikes as if they were burglars caught outside his bedroom window. He has staunch principles, strict routines, and a short fuse. People call him the bitter neighbor from hell. But must Ove be bitter just because he doesn't walk around with a smile plastered to his face all the time? Behind the cranky exterior, there is a story and a sadness. So when one November morning, a chatty young couple with two chatty young daughters move in next door and accidentally flatten Ove's mailbox, it is the lead-in to a comical and heartwarming tale of unkempt cats, unexpected friendship, and the ancient art of backing up a U-Haul. All of which will change one cranky old man and a local residents association to their very foundations. Frederick Backman's novel about the angry old man next door is a thoughtful exploration of the profound impact one life has on countless others. If there was an award for most charming book of the year, this first novel by Swedish blogger turned overnight sensation would win hands down. This review was from Booklist, posted on Amazon. So I know I kind of hit you guys with like a whirlwind of things that this episode is going to be about, but long story short, I think that endearing is one word that I would describe this book. It is heartwarming, it is tear-jerking, and it makes me remember why I love books again. So in any other instance, I would probably go, I would be lying if I said that the structure of my podcasts have structure at all. But there would probably be other topics that I talk about regarding this particular book, but because I'm integrating so many other outside kind of portions in this episode, I just wanted to read you guys the part in this book that is the reason behind this whole podcast. So, if you were one of my partners reading along with me, this excerpt I'm reading from is called, it's on chapter 12, and it's the intro to A Man Who Was Of, and One Day He Had Enough. So, it's just a few sentences, but it starts with this. People always said Ove and Ove's wife were like night and day. Ove realized full well, of course, that he was the night. It didn't matter to him. On the other hand, it always amused his wife when someone said it, because she could then point out while giggling that people only thought Ove was the night because he was too mean to turn on the sun. He never understood why she chose him. She loved only abstract things like music and books and strange words. Ove was a man entirely filled with tangible things. He liked screwdrivers and oil filters. He went through life with his hands firmly shoved into his pockets. She danced. You only need one ray of light to chase all the shadows away, she said to him once when he asked her why she had to be so upbeat the whole time. Apparently, some monk called Francis had written as much in one of her books. You don't fool me, darling, she said with a playful little smile and crept into his big arms. You're dancing on the inside of when no one's watching, and I'll always love you for that, whether you like it or not. Freaking cute, right? So, the premise of this kind of situation, and they've been painting it up to this point, is that Ov's wife was this flourishing, flamingo, radiant, sunshine, angel of a woman who blessed his life at such a hard time. And with Ove's upbringing in the novel, he was just the straight as an arrow, stand-up guy who got up, went to work, did his job, and didn't have any time for dilly-dallying. No time for joy. It's like his life purpose was just that. It was tasks. And there was no room for any kind of artsy fartsy, like no allotment for admiration of complex things or, like he said, abstract things. And pretty much his purpose in life was straightforward, and that was to accomplish his tasks and his job, and that was it. And that was until she entered his life. Some could say that Ove and his wife were opposites, complete opposites, and he wasn't the only one that recognized it. Apparently, his friends recognized it as well. But that didn't stop them from having the most beautiful and fruitful marriage. And that kind of leads in to my inquiry. So, again, thank you so much to my anonymous submission. I will say that this person who was asking this question is one of my very close friends from middle school. So it meant a lot that because of our history, we have been kind of through the ringer in terms of relation. We've grown up together, and he has seen me at my worst in terms of growth, getting through the middle school, just awkward phases, and through relationships as well. And it meant a lot to be able to talk on this, or that he even wanted to hear my opinion on this. So, like I said, it was kind of opportune for no reason too, because I just so happened to be reading this book while he asked and also listening to the Brené Brown podcast that I'll mention later. But let me start out with my gut reaction to this inquiry, which is this. Growing up, I thought dating someone that was very similar to you was ideal. I thought it was perfect. Like, I love myself. Why wouldn't I want to date me except hotter and with a vagina? Life plus experiences have taught me how wrong that perspective is. The question I have for you is, do y'all think it's best to date type A? It's best for type A people to date other type A people, or vice versa? The age old do opposites attract? And does it actually work better? I've heard you talk about you and Teddy's dynamic on the podcast, but I'm curious if you think there is a widespread application, or is it specific to each relationship and person? Kind of heavy, right? Like, whoa. I thought that this was such a fun, but also it's not just fun, it's a kind of a serious question to ask. So just to keep you guys in the loop, I ran a poll on Instagram and a poll on Twitter as well. My Instagram is Janine Between the Lines and at Janine BTL on Twitter. But I ran a poll asking, do you think personality types matter when it comes to success in relationships and lifelong love? And at the moment, 60% of people said that personality types matter. 40% said that they don't. That's Instagram. Hold, please, while I scroll to my Twitter poll and look at those results. And on Twitter, how many of you guys? Let's see. So I kind of phrased it differently on Twitter. I said, do you think type A personalities work well with other type A's, or does a type A person, does a type A with a type B personality work better? 67% of people said type A works better with type B, and 33% of people say that it doesn't matter. So we kind of got some variety all around. Maybe I should have streamlined and made the question similar, but all in all, it seems like personality types seem to matter to you guys, which is interesting to me. I didn't really know where that statistic was going to go. Again, thank you, my anonymous listener, for asking the question. And it took a lot of pondering for me to come to my answer. And you're not going to like it. I don't say that you're not going to like it because I think that I have a negative answer, but I think the fact of it is I just don't have an answer. I think I lean more towards your statement, like that it varies from person and situation. So not only did I reflect on this just now, and I see that you mentioned that I talked about Teddy and I's relationship in your inquiry. So I asked the person who knew me in that situation in a relationship the best, and that is Teddy. And so we had a long discussion about this, and ultimately what we came up with is this. It starts with the thought of what exactly defines a personality. When I think of personality, I think of, and let's take this in the dating, let's put our dating caps on. So when you think of personality, what are the things that you're thinking of? You're thinking of their their behaviors, you're thinking of their emotions, you're thinking of the things that they're interested in, you're thinking of their hobbies, you're thinking of what kind of music they like, you're thinking of how they interact with their friends. And when it comes to personalities, type A and type B are very generalized. I consider myself to be, by the most general term, I think that I'm a type A person. And the way that I define type A and type B personalities, type A is someone who's a little bit more high strung, a little bit more organized. What else comes directly? They're the director. Um, and they're more goal oriented and think well under stress. And when I think of type B, I think of a more, not flamboyant, but a more flexible, a more creative, um, a more relaxed kind of person. And that is me and my thoughts on those labels. And I don't think labels are problematic, but I think it can tend to box in beliefs. And when I was discussing this this question with Teddy, one of the main things that he's a proponent of is he hates throwing labels on things. So immediately the one thing that he said was, I don't like to put labels on things. And he just said that you can't match people together like perfect puzzle pieces, and that a, t- a type A person is exactly what a type B person is missing, and in order to make a relationship work. So on more about personality types. So when I think of personalities, I think making a relationship work is more than just about personalities, because this is what I think of. And this kind of takes me back to how I used to, I don't want to say my first, like high school dating or dating when I wasn't in, a more serious mindset. And there is an appeal to looking and being interested in someone who appears to be exactly like you. I remember, with a few of my like high school crushes or anything like that, they would be attractive, and then, as you get to know someone, it's refreshing and exciting when you meet someone and you're like, "Oh, wow, they like the same books that I do. They like the same movies that I do. They love the same, you know, artists that I do, or they love going to the gym. They love doing these activities just like me." But what sets that apart from someone in a working, functioning relationship? When I think of personality, that that part of a person, when you're in a relationship or working towards getting to that stage, it doesn't hold as much weight as it does then on an initial meeting and when actually in the thick of it with things. So, example, I think that Teddy and I have very similar personalities, but we function not as opposites, but we are very different when it comes to our day-to-day behaviors and activities. And that's where I think the distinction between not the distinction, but that is where I think the rift is between defining someone by a letter, and that you can't mix and match people based on whether someone is, quote, a type A or type B, because I think I'm a type A. Teddy is more of a type B. But the way that we function day to day and do our daily living activities are very complementary to each other. So I don't think that there is a widespread application to each person. I don't think that type A's and type A's shouldn't be together, or type A's and type B's are destined to work, or that similar personalities can't have successful relationships, or you have to be opposites in order to make relationships work. I think it's so much more complex than that. I I do think that there is a tendency to be more enamored with someone of your same type. People are, what's your type? Like, what type of person do you want to date, or do you want to spend the rest of your life with? It's always been historically labeled, and it's very easy to box yourself in and give yourself those thoughts that, oh, I want this, this, this in a partner, and it's not going to work unless they're this, this, this. Well, here's the thing. And this is how I like reaffirm my belief that I don't think there's a widespread application. There have been instances, not that I've personally experienced, but in the experiences of my friends, where you can think that someone is so similar to you and fall in love with that person's personality. And then you start dating for the next 5-6 months and things don't work out because of one which thing or another, something that bothers you, or maybe they don't clean up enough, or maybe they don't value family as much as you do. So values are actually another very interesting thing as well that should be taken into the equation, that I feel is outside of personality. So personality is just one factor. On the other hand, I have had instances where I would listen to friends where maybe a girl of mine would vent and say, oh my God, they're very attractive. So attractive is kind of what draws you in. But, oh, they're attractive, but our personalities don't match. They like very different music than I do. They are not going to school. They're not very goal oriented. They don't, they don't read the same books that I do. Our personalities just don't match. And then they would go and hook up and have the best sex of their life. So that means there's chemistry somewhere, and there's a complementing piece somewhere in there that works, but it's not the personalities that are matching, but something else is matching up, which physical intimacy is also such a unique dynamic as well that isn't taken into account when you are just looking at personality to define whether a relationship will work or not. So, my anonymous listener, to answer your question in full, let me refer back. There's no simple answer to your question. And I hate to be that person. I don't hate to be this person. I like pretending I'm a counselor when really Teddy is my first real relationship that I've ever been in. But I'm glad you want my opinion on things. But yes, I don't think it's best for type A to date other type A's, or type A's to date type B's. I think you date who you feel matches your authentic self and who your soul can have a true connection with, whether that be through your daily functionings, through the personality traits, through the times that you share, through your different physical and emotional intimacies. And there's just way too many factors to really enclose yourself and dwell on whether this person is exactly like you. You need someone that functions in the way that you do or has the same mindset. I feel like the types, those outdated types, are more like like mindsets than actual personalities. You know what I mean? After doing research, like just brief research just on Google, they're very generalized, and I would gravitate more towards listing out a person's like character traits rather than try to find out exactly what type they are to define whether or not that kind of person would be fit to be in a relationship with. And that's all I got to say about that for now, at least. So not only was I reading A Man Called Ove when I got this question, which kind of matched what I was talking about to the question, how Ove was this curmudgeon and she was this beautiful butterfly, and they were able to make it work, which is just a testament that you can't really put two types together and definitively say, oh, this is a match made in heaven. But I was listening to another podcast just this week, and easily it has become my favorite commuting podcast. It's called Unlocking Us with Brene Brown. And she did a podcast with doctors John and Julie Gottman on what makes love last. I'll be linking this entire podcast and Dr. Gottman's links and everything down below in the description notes. But pretty much this podcast that she had with Dr. John and Julie Gottman is kind of talking about how all things in terms of successful loving relationships, how the pandemic has taken a toll on couples, and just their work in the context of current events and what's going on right now in terms of our racial tensions. And just in general, they have done so much work in the line of marriage and relationships. So Dr. John Gottman, he has published so much, has done so much research on marital stability and divorce predictions. And Dr. Julie Gottman is a clinical psychologist, and she is an expert on marriage, domestic violence, gay, lesbian adoption, same-sex marriage, and parenting issues. And what they have created together, and what the small dose that I've gotten from just listening to this podcast without reading any of their books. I will be picking up their books very, very soon. It's just amazing. It's crazy how much I learn. And for no particular reason at all, I love learning about relationships and how people interact with others. And the reason that I chose this podcast was just because, I got that question. I was like, oh, I wonder if there's any helpful tidbits and that I could use in answering for this episode. And oh, did I? Did I find freaking fuel to answer your question, my anonymous friend? I kind of wanted to introduce you guys to who Brene Brown was too. I'm sure you guys know who she is. She's a research professor at the University of Houston, and she's also a public speaker. She's spent the past 2 decades kind of exploring the ideas of courage, vulnerability, shame, empathy, and her associated mantra is awkward, brave, and kind. And it talks all about vulnerability, embracing the suck. And she is just one of my top 10 role models and leaders that make me want to be the best woman revolutionary that I aspire to be. So she's great. Again, I'll be linking all of this material down below, but I wanted to talk about this particular part in the podcast, in their podcast, that kind of answers your question as well, anonymous listener. So while they were talking about, how the pandemic has affected our relationships, and keep in mind, this is just for kicks, but Dr. Julie and John Gottman have pretty much created, along with the help of their partners and colleagues, they've created a system and have done research where they can watch couples either interact in a fight or a disagreement or an argument for about 5 minutes or so. And within those 5 minutes, they have an almost sure efficacy rate of knowing whether that couple is going to divorce in 2 years or stay together. And it's such gratifying work. I can't wait to dive into more of the book because I just listened to it briefly in this podcast, but there's so much more to go through. But in regards to personalities and what we look for and matching in a relationship, this is kind of something that got my attention because it directly relates to your question. So John went on to say, where relationship science is the weakest is in trying to predict whether 2 strangers will like each other and hit it off. There's nothing we can measure that really allows us to do that prediction, and people have tried all kinds of things: preferences, interests, common values, philosophies, even asking people what they want and matching that. Nothing works, but we do know that people are not looking for their clone. Similarity is not the basis of attraction. So we want something really interesting and different from who we are. And the real problem that people get into when they form a relationship is then trying to turn that other person into them. And so criticism is what emerges. And so the disaster couples in the lab, so this was the research they were doing, the disaster couples in the lab that Bob and I created are pointing their fingers at their partner and saying, as far as I can tell, I'm pretty much perfect, but you're defective. Here's what's wrong with you. And then they go on to list all these characteristics that they want their partner to change in hopes that their partner will respond by saying, oh, John, you're so intelligent and so sensitive. Tell me more about how I can change to make you happy. And instead, as a response, they get defensiveness and the partner saying, you're not so perfect either. Here's what's wrong with you. And so they're off and running. And yeah. So I thought that was so interesting and so right. Kind of just what we talked about earlier. It's like, if there's a little bit of vanity in the idea that you want someone just like you because you think that you are the ideal match for yourself. It's kind of a nice little pedestal right there, But I do understand that sentiment, wanting someone to be similar, but I feel like that mindset can lead to um, just increased disappointment and being unable to find the impossible, because there's no way that you are going to find the exact version of you in your desired gender's form. And I think that once the mindset changes to where you're not looking for someone to be so similar to you, rather than someone that you can connect with and be vulnerable with and authentically yourself, that is where you will start to find somebody you can spend the rest of your life with. Oh, that was such a great podcast. I can't say enough good things about it, and I'm so surprised that I'm only listening to it now, but I just thought that, it's interesting that they said it too, and they've got more credibility under the belt than I have any talking about this subject. But yeah, it's so completely right. There's no way, like, no, you're not looking for your clone. You know what I mean? And this was brought up with Teddy prior to me meeting him. Do you ever feel like when you're in the thick of being interested in someone and in the dating phase, do you ever compromise on the things? Like, let's say your love interest says, "Oh, I really love knitting chameleons. I'd really love for you to start knitting chameleons with me." And in your head, you're like, "Oh, I don't want green yarn. Like, no, this isn't who I am. I don't want to be a part of this. This isn't my personality. These aren't my interests." But, because you are interested in this person, and because you want to spend time with this person, and because this person is so passionate about this, you ever make that sacrifice and you're like, "Okay, I guess I'll knit like a couple reptiles with you." And that's how you know it's not all about being interested and liking the same things and having the same personalities, because there's so much that goes into account and so much that you have to sacrifice in order to to be and find someone that you can really love for a long time. You're not always going to like the same stuff. You're not always going to agree on the same things. And despite how different Teddy and I are, he still has ways that, he can read my mind and anticipate my needs and be there when I need him to be. And despite our differences and our very, very starkly different opinions on certain things, or our approaches to different conflicts and situations, for some reason, he is a very fitted match for me. And we definitely don't have the same personality types. He's very brash. And I'm very passive, I think, which I know I talk all the time. And if conflict arose, I think that I'm very straightforward with solving, but no, we have our differences, and I'm happy that he's not a clone of me. I'm happy that we see things differently, and I'm happy that I get to see different sides of things and different avenues as to how to solve these problems or how to go through this. And it kind of ties into the idea. Do you ever, all my healthcare professionals out there, there's so many people who are like, I would never date another nurse. Or it's one spectrum or the other. There are people who want to date within the healthcare field because when they come home after a long day, they want to be able to talk about their days and have their partner understand it. For me, I'm also the opposite. I live on the other side. And I don't really want to come home and explain how crappy my day was and have my partner be like, "Oh, well, did you do this order or do this?" And like, know exactly. I just know when I come home, I'm going to have the care and sympathy. And even though he has no idea what I'm talking about, I get co- um I get consoled and I'm taken care of and I'm listened to and I'm coddled. And that's the kind of dynamic that I need. Relationships can't be, even friendships. You can't be too alike in friendships either. You're gonna clash. Either way, you're gonna clash. If you're too different, you're gonna clash. If you're too similar, you're gonna clash too. It's all Darwinistic in ways. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I hope that was a nice little discussion, my anonymous listener. I hope you guys are not deterred. I would love for you guys to send in more questions. Like maybe I'll try to do a little question and answer session if you guys get at me through Twitter or Instagram or even email. Shout out to another one of my listeners. I hope you don't mind me mentioning, but Mike, shout out to Mike for shooting me an email after listening to my IQ84 episode. It really touched my heart. And like I said, if you guys ever are wanting to like talk about books with me or ask me random questions, I'm all down for it. And I can talk about it on here. We can have a little conversation. So yeah, I just thought it was really weird. And there's just so much congruency with the book that I was reading, with the question that I got, with the podcast I was listening to. I was like, oh my God, this is a trifecta. This is like chocolate trifle with caramel and like freaking strawberry ice cream. I don't know. It all goes together. But yeah. What do you guys think? What personality type are you? And what personality type is your partner? If you don't have a partner, what personality type do you find yourself gravitating towards? Or do you agree with me? Do you think that there's no fitting label for, personalities? That kind of leads into a bigger question too. Like, what are you one of those people who base your partners off of certain aspects of personality? Like maybe you are really into horoscopes. Like, are you an Aries that is like hard pass on a Sagittarius? Or are you like, I am a 2-wing 3 and there's no way I date a 3-wing 4 in terms of Enneagrams? Or are you an ENTJ and you actually made it work with an INFP for 7 years, but you ended up breaking up? I'm so interested. I think I need you guys to go leave a comment on my Instagram or tweet me or shoot me an email because I am so interested in your stories. And if, with you guys' permission, I'd love to share them in my next episode. So please, 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 I would love to hear from you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Let me know if you guys end up picking up A Man Called Ove. let me know about that little last question, personality inquiry type 2. I would love to hear from you guys. And I kind of just wanted to old school end this with a couple of music faves. So Spotify, don't own any of the rights to this, just kind of playing from my phone. Please don't. No copyright intended. But an artist that I've kind of fell in love with is Kyle Dion. He is a very funky, like soulful R&B, killer falsetto, just groovy artist. And you guys know how much value I put in an album that I can listen to top to bottom to kind of fully appreciate the artistry of an artist. So just wanted to play a couple songs. First one is called Glass House. And this one it just puts me in a good mood.
All that you ever need. I'm running through town. Don't recognize this place. Powder on my plate, been acting a fool. If you were in my shoes, you would do the same. Won't pay you enough. Pay you enough. I'm in no rush. It's never enough.
They're just the best. I always say driving songs, but just any mood songs. Cleaning, going on a walk.
Try to get you to ride, and it was watching us lately. They will be
And then the next song that I love off the album, it's called, well, there's so many, but I'm trying to just pick two. Spend It is really good, but this one is called Hands to Yourself. Spotify's partners with Anchor now. I shouldn't have copyright stuff, right? You guys feel that? It's just groovy as crap. And that's pretty much it. Keep that playing in the background. But again, I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening to me blab on about this book and love and relationships and types and who the heck do I think I am? Let me know in the comments. If you love this podcast, again, please share it. I hope you guys, please give me a pat on the back. I feel very on a roll with, posting every couple weeks, every Sunday at either 7 a.m. or 9 a.m. So you're ready for like a Monday commute or just a chill Sunday. Just kick back with me, be a part of the conversation. So again, I love you guys. I'll see you next Sunday. Probably be an OTT. We'll see if I have a guest on it. The world is literally our oyster. I love you all. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Why do I sign off like that? When have I ever signed off like that? I love you guys. See you in the next one.